Hey, what's up guys, I'm Glenn and today I'm going to show you how to make this cool headphone stand that allow you to dock a laptop, tablet, or even your phone. It also have an integrated lamp so you can minimize desk clutter. And this video is brought to you by Google. The way my life is structured right now, I work off of 2 computers, and my desktop handles the bulk of the editing and all the heavy load stuff. For everything else, I'm using my Google Chromebook. And whether it's surfing the web, checking my email, taking notes, or even just looking at some of the plans I build in my shop, the battery life is amazing and it have kept up with all those demands I throw at it. Now I do have a few Google apps that I'm a big user of, and I actually use them across all my devices. So no matter which device I'm on, I'm always on top of things. The one thing I knew was I wanted to create a headphone stand, and that was pretty much all the planning that went into the project. So everything was created on the fly, and I just made all the necessary adjustments as time went on. I started by creating an irregular arch on the inside, then I cut that out on the bandsaw. This piece will be for the vertical arm on the stand. Next, I made my way over to the miter saw where I cut off a section at a 15-degree angle. Then I flipped it around and did the same thing on the opposite side. Now I'm going to take one of those ends and place it at the top of the arm. Next, I'm going to trace out the arm curvature onto that. Then rip it down on the bandsaw. Now after cutting out the shape, I can then split it in half, and I'm going to use the 2 sides to thicken up the top part of the arm. Now apply wood glue on both sides. Now add a few clamps to hold the pieces in place and allow enough time for the glue to dry. Now this block of wood is a whole lot thicker than I like, so I'm going to cut it down and rip off a section on the bandsaw. Off camera, I cut the block to a 15-degree angle, which matched the arm. I'm going to center up the 2 pieces of wood, then I add a piece of tape in place. Then I can mark the perimeter of it onto the base. And now back to the bandsaw, I can now cut this section out. So I now want to add some style to the top part of it, and this was the main reason for me fattening the top. So I'm going to take a can, and I did put 2 marks on the can just so that I can transfer the same line from both sides. And we're back to the bandsaw again to cut this shape out. The base is pretty thick, and I don't want to keep taking off layers from the top or the bottom, so what I'm going to do is just trim off both sides just to make it look a bit smaller. I'm going to draw out a line on the back side, and this is going to be a place to dock the Chromebook. To remove this section, I'll be using my trim router with a straight bit, and I'll make multiple passes until all the material is removed. Now as I make my way back to the top, I'm going to make a center mark on both sides of the top. Then I'll connect that line going across. Next, I'll make 2 marks on the outside of the center point, making those about 3/4 of an inch away. Then I can take my chisel and just shave off the corner, creating a bit of a roundover. And this is where the arc on the headphone will sit, and I just want to make sure it's a comfortable location. And just duplicate the same thing on the opposite side. Now I do want to be able to reduce clutter on the desk, so what I want to do is incorporate a desk lamp. So I had a couple pieces of LED cover on hand, which I cut down to fit into this space. Now after tracing it onto the wood, I can then take my chisel and go around the perimeter of that. Then I can take my frosting bit and drill out the entire length of this opening. This way I have less material to remove by hand. And now I need to drill a hole from the bottom to the top where the LED channel is. I started with a smaller bit, then switched to a larger bit because the smaller bit is a little easier to control. I started drilling from the bottom first, then I made my way to the top, and then I drilled down. And this way I can meet the two holes. After looking around, I was able to find a piece of plexiglass. Even though it was used, that's fine. I was able to incorporate it into this project. So I'm going to sit the base on top of that and trace the perimeter. Then I'll take it over to the bandsaw and cut the shape out. Initially, I was going to drill out this section here so I can pass the wire, but turns out I didn't need to do that just yet. So we'll skip this section for now and move on. Now I can glue and attach both parts together. Now this should be a tight fit, so it's going to take some force and pressure to work that into place. Next, I'm going to grab some of that sawdust the bandsaw created, and I'm going to use some wood glue and run it around the perimeter of that. Now this is probably the best wood filler you can find. It's just taking some of the same sawdust and using wood glue, mixing it all together and fill in the areas. Now take a few clamps and add some pressure on this area and allow enough time for the glue to dry. I set the bandsaw fence a 1/4 inch away from the blade, which is the same thickness as the plexiglass. Then I'm going to make one rip of the base. Then I set that piece to the side. Then I make another rip. Now this second rip that's coming out, that needs to be thrown away. We're going to insert the plexiglass in this section. Now previously I told you to skip a section because I didn't need to drill that section out. So what I'm going to do right now is take a piece of wood and fill in this section, and this will be for the bottom. To make a center mark in the plexi, then drill out a 5-inch hole. Traced out the circle that was cut into the plexiglass at the bottom of the base. Then I can route that section out. Next, I'm going to clamp the plexiglass to the bottom of the base. Then I'll take my trim router with a flush bit and even up the plexiglass. And I'll repeat this same step on all 3 sides except for the front. I'm going to sand that down. At this moment, I have the plexiglass, the bottom, and everything all clamped together. Now it's time to install the power inlet. So I'm going to drill out a hole. I do need to be a bit careful here. Don't want to drill into the channel where I'll be docking the Chromebook. And once I'm done with that, then it's on to the power switch to control the lamp light. And now that I have both the switch and the power inlet installed, I'm gonna now clamp it back together, and then we're gonna install a few screws. I want the bottom to be removable. I thought about epoxying it on, but there may be a problem in the future. Maybe I want to change some things about it, and I want to be able to get to it and remove this piece at will. And at this point, the sanding is all done. So I'm gonna add some Minwax stain on this just to kind of darken it up and put that nice finished touch to it. Now, as I was removing the stain, I got super excited. You know, I'm more like, yo, but just seeing the tone, just being able to see the grain just coming through and popping through here. Like, I gotta be honest, I'm not the biggest stain fan, but it is nice to see it in a small form like this. And I topped it off by spraying on some polyurethane, and that gave it that sheen, and I'm excited about that. I don't want to change the color on the headphone stand, so I'm just going to wire straight to the color that I want, which is the blue color. Now if you want red, you can wire it to red as well, or you can put 2 of the colors together and make a color. Put red to 12 volt, and then I'm going to put black to the blue color. Now this strip of LED is not color changing and will only be used for the lamp. And I'm going to connect to the positive and the negative. Next, I'm going to solder on some leads onto the power inlet. Next, I'm going to install the LEDs for the lamp, and I'm going to pass the cables through down to the bottom of the base. Now I can remove the paper on the back and press the LED down into place so that it sits still. And to hold the LED cover into place, I'm going to throw in some hot glue and then press the cover down into place. Make sure it's seated properly, and then remove the protective paper. And now I'm going to finish installing all the components, and next it's time to install the power switch. And as you can see, there's 2 wires I soldered onto it. This switch will be controlling the lamp. Put the plexiglass in place and then install the strip going around the interior. I also applied some hot glue to help hold that into place. I'm going to take all my black wires, which are the negatives, and set those to the side. Next, I'm going to take the positive from the power inlet. I'm going to take the positive from the LED strip going around the plexi, and 1 leg from the power switch. Now take all those reds, twist them together, strip the wire, and then solder those. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the negative leg of the wire, which is the black wire. I'm going to strip and twist all those together as well. Next, I add a little bit of solder on them. So the 2 remaining red wire would be 1 leg from the lamp light and then the other leg from the switch. I'm going to twist those 2 together. Then I'll take some shrinking tube, place it on the wire, and shrink the tube with some heat. And at this point, all the splice points are made, so I can now clean it up and add the bottom. It's also a good idea to test the work before you go through all the trouble of putting it together, just to make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. And lastly, I'm going to add some rubber bumpers at the bottom.